Don't take your eyes off me. That you can't deny. Confident and gracious while stacking up paper on top of her game.
Hi guys, this is Angel with Beauty and Beast in Business and the Pro Firm. I'm so happy that you can join us today. I have our beautiful Miss Liz M. Lopez, who is a career coach and author. And I'm really excited to have her here because we're going to talk about lots of different things to navigate our careers, which include resume writing, representing yourself, and just having the, I'm going to say, gumption to kind of get out there and take those risks that sometimes we're not very comfortable with. So it's very nice to have you here, Liz.
Thank you, Angel, so much for having me. I'm super excited about our conversation.
So what can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your career?
Sure. So I have been a career and business coach now for 13 years. And I started part-time while I was still working in a full-time environment at leadership positions at several large companies. And then kind of built it as a side gig, like I was side gigging before side gigging was cool. And then, a year and a half later, after another corporate layoff, I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this full time. There's such a need, whether the market is great or the market is not, for people to have really solid guidance around how to communicate themselves in a powerful way, and then to use what tools to accomplish which goals. So I've been coaching now for 13 years. I have a best-selling book, and I have a new book coming out soon, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. And I have spoken to audiences in over 43 countries, which just feels amazing. Like sometimes it's like, is this my life? But it's such an honor to serve in this way, because we may be good at what we do, but sometimes we forget how to promote ourselves and make sure that we have a place at the table.
Yes, that's a lovely way to put it, because when I talk to other women, or when I kind of created the Pro Firm, it was the same thing. It was like, how do we bring more women to the table into risk management based on Department of Labor in California? Women versus men is like 1 to 15, 1 to 17, something like that. So pretty expansive. And as I started to talk to these women, and women not in risk management, but also women who wanted to come into risk management, it wasn't that they didn't know their stuff. They know their stuff. They're brilliant women. They're so smart. But it was, how do we do this resume to represent ourselves right? How do we ask for that bonus? How do we ask for that raise? All these different ways. And so how do you see you said you've spoken in all of these countries. Do you see a difference? I'm sure you do, in employment and how women are actually kind of moving through these careers in different countries?
So I specialize in the U.S. job market, but I do engage with a lot of people in other countries. And when I'm speaking, that's broadcast out very, very broadly. And honestly, the responses that I'm getting, the things that people are resonating to, are pretty much the same. Like there's different levels of opportunity and visibility, and different countries are doing different things. But there are things we learn as women that we just show up differently in the job market. And when I'm coaching, I don't only coach women, I coach men as well. And their challenges sometimes are the same, sometimes are different. But the truth is that there are certain things that are common throughout. And I'll give you a very specific example. When men go into an interview, they tend to be very clear that they're there to promote themselves. And their sentences start with the word I. I led this thing. I contributed that thing. I created, I developed, I this. Women, equally qualified, just as amazing, will go into an interview and talk about we. We did this, the team did that, our group, our company. And they will inadvertently water themselves down, Angel, to the point that they are insignificant in their own stories.
Yeah,
And that is worldwide.
we talk about, as we were just talking about these books behind us, and kind of let's go into that about being our own main character. I mean,
Mhm.
we are great about being authors and writing out these stories. We are great about narrating other people's stories. But
Yes, we
we're not very good about being main characters, because we actually push ourselves back into the second or the third level, because our goal as women, if we are mothers or we have these other kind of roles that we play, our basis is to be support, right? We support our children, we support our family, we support these things. So we become supporting characters in our own stories.
And look, and while that's a great Oscar to have, Best Supporting Actress, you know, every so often you got to get the winning role, especially when it's about you, when it's about
Yeah.
your opportunities, your career, your business, your revenue, your legacy. You have to be central to those particular stories, right?
Yeah. And how do you present that in a coaching manner when you're talking to women who come to you and that's an issue? Honestly, that's always been an issue in my career or my life. It was having to create this consciousness around it and keep saying and then when we say I, we're like, ooh, where does that put us? Does that put us in a position where we're being too pushy or too, as people call it, aggressive or narcissistic? Or there's so many words that people use when women use the word I. So how do you coach them through that?
It's unique in every case, and I will tell you that this is challenging for women because it feels like at times, men have this great big difference between, I'm humble and I'm bragging, right? Like there's a lot of space, a lot of space. Whereas for women is I'm humble and I'm bragging is like this much.
Yeah.
So it can feel like it's a fine line to walk. But you said something that I think is really important, the consciousness of it. And so much of it is simple awareness. There is so much that we do as women in our careers and our professions that we don't understand that there's splinters. It's not like there's big things. They're tiny little splinters that we have inside ourselves that are kind of keeping us from certain motions. Because if you have a splinter on your finger and you touch something, that splinter's there. Like you can feel it keeps you from keeping to touch things, right? Until you deal with it. So
Right.
sometimes these things are not noticeable until you hit that right spot. So awareness is number one. And for some professionals that I work with, and I'm working with professionals all the way from kind of middle management to senior executives of billion-dollar companies. And sometimes awareness is all you need. Like it clicks and they go with that. Others need more practice, more coaching over time. And for others, it's a much deeper deep dive because we have to really understand what's the limiting belief, what's the doubt, what's the conditioning that's in there that's keeping you from constantly having to hide behind a group.
Conditioning, that's such a big kind of aspect of what we talk about, because I love, podcasts and books and articles. And, right now with our female empowerment, women empowerment movement, that's kind of come in probably the last year or so and continues to grow. What I see is there are some great articles with information, but there's not really actionable steps, right? They tell you, other than stand your ground, be strong, know who you are. Like those are great taglines or hashtags, but there's not really that action at the end of these articles that say, okay, you can utilize A, B, and C to get there. And it is something that everybody has kind of been conditioned since childhood, whether we are female or male. You have had this conditioning about what the world expects of you and what you expect of yourself. So like you said, there's always something deeper. And until we get to that that initial kind of seed of where everything's growing from, it's kind of hard to get to that next level.
It's really difficult to accomplish an end goal through an article, right? Like they don't really know what steps what people need, and is there really a 1, 2, 3 magic solution? And of course, in these days of litigation and care, so many publications are afraid, like, we want to be careful we don't trigger anybody in a certain way. So it's not a direct arrow right there. And that's why having a mentor, an accountability group, a mastermind group, or a coach can be so powerful in building yourself up and creating your career or your business, because you need someone that can work with you on what your specific triggers, limiting beliefs, or conditionings may be, so that you can release them. You can come to a place where you have, and look, it's not like it's a magic thing, like, okay, do this thing. And like, for some people, it's quick. For others, it takes practice. Mm-hmm. But what better thing to work on than practice your own liberation?
Oh, I love that word, liberation. Yeah, because it is, right? It's breaking out of that box that maybe we've been stuck in for so long. And, so many times there are, or let's say there's this limiting belief that we've hit success when we make X amount of dollars. And there are times where people are like, I should really be grateful that I have this good job. I should really be grateful that I'm making X amount of dollars that helps me or my family pay our bills or do these specific things. And I shouldn't want any more than that. Or I should really just be happy, because if I want something more, then that means that I'm ungrateful and unsatisfied. How do you speak to that?
I think this is a really big issue right now, and I want to start with the whole X dollars thing. I work with a lot of people who make a lot of money who are miserable. If you are not in a job where you are not respected, you are not heard, you are not seen, where the values don't align to your values, no amount of money is going to make you feel good about that job. Right? I work with professionals who are transitioning all the time because it's just not a right match. All the way from it just doesn't click to there is shady stuff going on, right? So it's really not about the money. The money's not necessarily the measure of how happy and how successful you are. There's a crossroads in that. I did a post on LinkedIn not long ago that you talked about that. It's not about the title or the money. It's about, are you heard? Are you seen? Are you respected? Do you enjoy your peers? Do you have purpose in your work? Are you excited to get up in the morning? And then, are you paid your worth? Because that certainly is a component. Because equally, if you love your job and love your people, but feel consistently underrewarded, that's going to over time become uncomfortable as well. Mm-hmm. The second thing you mentioned was this concept of gratitude. Really big issue right now. It's always been a thing that when you reach a certain level, like, isn't that good enough? Like the whole good enough thing, little pat on the head, like, oh, look, you've done so well. Why do you want more? In general, Angel, there are no 100% here, but in general, people wouldn't think to tell that to a guy. Like, people would expect him to go to the next level, Like, what's your next plan? What's your next move? What you're on the hunt. But for women, it's like, oh, you're VP. Why would you ever want to be a C-suite? Like, won't that interfere with your home? Like, don't you have kids? Like, there's so many things that didn't come on to cap us. And some of those things happen inside of ourselves, which is the whole premise of my new book, Permission to Dominate. Because permission to dominate is not about being mean to people. It's not about conquering others. It's about the permissions that we give ourselves, because we do limit ourselves in terms of how far we think we should be. Gratitude, while it is important and it is an incredibly opening practice, at this time, there's some danger in it, because there's this feeling of so many people have lost their jobs. You're lucky to have a job. Why do you want a different job? Why do you want more? Why are you thinking about leaving your job? Oh my gosh, there's so many people unemployed. Like, there's a stigma now happening a little bit with people that that want to do more, want to grow their business. Like, you're really going to raise your prices now? Like there's so much judgment happening if you're good enough. But I think it's important, especially now, and I'm actually doing an event about this on October 8th, that we need to reset our thinking. We have been conditioned over the summer into very, very strict survival mode. It's time to start breathing again and getting back to thriving mode.
There was a big conversation. I remember when, COVID first hit, and there was conversation about, oh, well, nobody should be selling. Nobody, if you're selling, people were looking very, very negatively because they're like, you're actually going to sell something and people don't have the money. Meanwhile, that was a portion of it, but there were still a lot of people who were employed. They were still bringing in their normal wages, and so how fair is it for if there's an employment or a career where these people are bringing in normal wages and you have entrepreneurs or small businesses whose livelihood actually falls on those sales? Like, we're supposed to tell them, don't sell anything, and so there was a lot of conversation about that. And I would tell people, hey, put it out there. If you're selling something, put it out there, promote yourself, promote your company. The people who are connected or want it, they're going to buy. The people who are not, they're not. And they probably wouldn't have bought even if we weren't in a COVID, pandemic, or there was an issue. And again, it's that communal expectation, right? And so at this point, I tell people, we have to figure out what we need, what we want, what is good for ourselves. When we talk about success, what is that balance? Is it success? It means something different to everybody. And there's usually a balance of it. I mean, sometimes it is, I need to make X amount of dollars to have that success because I have to pay my bills, or I want to have extra dollars to go on vacation. Others, it's, I need to be able to work remote from home because I have children at home. And so while I love my career, I still need to make sure that my success means that my family is taken care of. Or, it means something different to everybody. And again, I tell everybody, but especially women, we have to sometimes put on the blinders or close our ears to those negative incoming comments, because they sway us in a point where we go, oh, everybody says I should be this person, I should do this, and then we do, and we're miserable. Mm-hmm. And then it comes back to, what does success mean to me? What does it mean to you? And for you as a coach and your book, I really want to hear more about your book, especially because I love the branding. I love the title. And I think that it gives women, and it's going to give women and people in general a foundation of, it's okay to give ourselves permission. Can you tell us a little bit more about that book?
Sure. Permission to Dominate started in 2018. I did my first speaking on this topic, very, very, kind of, how are people going to take this? Because I by that point, it'd been almost 12 years of seeing this same repeated pattern of where women hold themselves back. And it was a time a lot of conversations were happening. There was all this Me Too going on, and there were all these external things. We have as a society, we have to fix this. And that is 100% valid. Mm-hmm. But what I felt was missing was the internal work, was the mirror where we're looking at, we understand, we see clearly when somebody else slights us. Do we see when we're slighting ourselves? And what are some areas, and it really kind of ended up boiling down to 7 permissions of areas where women were truly just not putting best foot forward. And is things as something as simple as, the permission to be supported. I was coaching a client the other day, and, her husband works a full-time job, does very well. They have a bunch of kids. She stays home, but she's growing a side business that is becoming massive, is becoming huge. So there's tension sometimes around, well, you're home with the kids, but why are you working? They say that you were, in the closet doing some work. And there's, and I hear like those versions of those stories all the time, right? Whether it's an executive and, when are you coming home, to if it's a stay-at-home mom, there's all these issues. And a lot of times it's because we've never had the conversation. We've never said, here's my endeavor. Here's this thing that I want to do. How can we as a family, balance things out so I can carve out some time to do this? Because what women do as a knee-jerk reaction is that we want to do our thing hidden from everything else, right? We're in the back burner. So when everybody else is taken care of and we're like almost exhausted at 10 o'clock at night, then we're going to work on our dream. And we never asked them, hey, look, between 3 and 5 p.m., I need that to be my time. Or, you know what, mommy's going to get up early, but between 7 and 9, my time. Like, we don't ask for that kind of support. We never communicate what it is we're trying to do. Now, I shouldn't say never, right? Because sometimes we do, and sometimes they're not that responsive. And those are things to maneuver and negotiate through. But a lot of times, we haven't even asked.
That is very true. And I think that we haven't even asked because so many times we feel like we don't deserve that time or we're not supposed to have that time. And I myself did not come into the corporate world until 2009. Prior to that, I did work, as a small kind of bookkeeper, and I was raising 2 children, and I was a single mom, and I decided I got laid off, right before Christmas, a week before Christmas, I got laid off. And I came home and I thought, what am I going to do? And I said, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go to school. So I enrolled myself in an associate's program, and I started doing that. And I was taking care of my kids, and I ended up getting remarried to my first husband. I ended up getting married to my first husband. But part of that was I had just finished my associates and I was getting ready to go into my bachelor's. And it had to be an understanding that this is something I need to do for myself. I am going to be educated. I am going to get a degree. So not only did we do that, I said, you need to go to school and you need to get educated and get a degree, because I've known my husband since I was in 2nd grade and we were high school sweethearts. And I'm like, we need to do this, but we need to do this together. Like it has to be this balance. Even that being said, when I came into the corporate world by accident, and I decided to, kind of pursue that because I was like, hey, this isn't really what I wanted to do, but I'm good at it. So I just went full force. When I started this little business 2 years ago, it really wasn't meant to be a business. It was meant to be just a way for me to help other people, help other women. But I kept it a secret. I was about 4 months in before I even said, hey, by the way, I have this business license, this tax ID,
surprise,
a logo, and I have a business. Surprise, exactly, surprise. And he was like, when did you do all that? Well, I was doing it early in the morning before work or late at night after I made dinner, and I've helped with homework because I now have a 14-year-old. But I had to, after I reflected, 4 months in, it took me 4 months to go, hey, wait a minute. I need to ask him for help. Like, I need to not only ask him, I need to tell him that this is what I need in order to fulfill what I was missing and to be able to help other people and to be a role model for my girls. But again, it was like, when are you going to speak up and say, this is what you need?
It's not intuitive for many of us. And there's a point I wanted to make, and you just said it beautifully, role model to my girls. You see, when we, as I'm not a mom, I have 14 nieces and nephews. Right? So
Wow.
when we are visible to our young ones, we are teaching them things. So when our young girls see us kind of doing our thing in the background, they learn that what they want to do will never matter. Right? Will never matter. Like they will always have to do everything else first and then carve out time from their sleep and self-care if they dare to have a dream. It's a powerful message that we're sending. We don't even realize it. So yes, we need to be more courageous in having those conversations to say, let's all talk about what we want to do this year. What are our goals? What do we want to do? How do we support each other as a family? Because the kid says, I want to do baseball, all of a sudden, like the whole family schedules changes to support this kid going to, 10 games every semester and all this craziness happens. But what happens when, dad wants to go back to school or mom wants to get a certification? Like we need to rally just as hard for what we want to do as grown-ups. We don't stop, just because we graduate high school or college, we don't stop growing. We're still building. We're always a work in progress. And we need to give ourselves permission to do that in a supported way.
We keep coming back to the theme of supported. And it's something that some of us feel very uncomfortable with. I know I did initially because of this, Wonder Woman kind of theory. I mean, I'll be honest, Wonder Woman is my icon. I've always loved her since I was a kid, right? But we have this kind of theory of I can do it all. I know that I was told by somebody, well, you're the one who wanted to work. I was actually, in a company, and I was like, oh, is there any way I need to take some PTO off on this? And it was like, well, you're the one who wanted to work. And it gave me that kind of idea of, oh, okay, so I am supposed to be able to do it all. I'm supposed to be able to raise my kids, have a home, make sure that there's dinner on the table, make sure that I'm working because I chose. It kept coming back to like, oh, well, I chose this. So, until you figure out it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to gather a support team. And part of that is continual growth and education. And part of that is finding not just other women in our communities or in our industries, but outside of that, finding organizations to reach out to. And I know I was extremely afraid when I first started going to some organizational meetings because I would literally sit in the back. Now, I was a student who always sat in the front of the room because I wanted that knowledge, right? But then when I started going to events, I would sit in the back of the room because I felt like an imposter. I was like, I'm not smart enough to be here. Look at all these business people. Look at all these people who are, brilliant VPs. And I just have this little career, How do you speak to that about helping people get to a point where they understand that it's okay to find support in whatever they need?
So permission to be supported is the second permission in the book. And it is, as you're discovering, a very big one. And again, we go back to what are people's specific triggers? What are their specific fears? What traps them specifically? But in general, it's the first one is just understanding that you are worthy of being supported, right? Like that there's a worthiness that needs to be understood there. And here, I'm going to tell all of you a little secret. Those VPs and those executives and those billion-dollar people all have their own fears, their own doubts, their own weaknesses, right? They have their own things going on inside of them, their own limiting beliefs. Everybody does. And a lot of times we try to maneuver and get as far as we can by working around them. But the truth is that we all have the ability to grow, and we all have value, something to contribute. I mean, the reason that they got to where they are because at some point they were brave enough to open their mouth and share a great idea or get things done in a special way that got them the recognition and the ability to then have advancement, right? So that courageousness that we need to have inside ourselves, that permission that we need to give ourselves across the board, and especially around being supported and being heard, it has a magnitude effect on how we are able to evolve as people.
So the running theme in everything I do is risk navigation. And it started out, as I said, just a way to assist women in risk management, right? And then it was really, I mean, quick and in a hurry did I figure out it's not really what it's about. It's about risk navigation in our lives, in our careers, in the decisions that we make, and giving ourselves grace when we have fear, but understanding that working through that fear is about having some risk-taking ability, not being extremely risk adverse. And by doing that, if we do our homework, we have a little bit of, intellectual thinking about what risks are real and what risks are imaginary, right? What risk
Danger is real, fear is optional.
exactly. And previously I had talked about this kind of the shark in the pool, right? I remember as a kid, I had that fear of, after seeing Jaws, oh my God, there's a shark in the pool. So it was not going to do no night swimming. I will tell you, I did no night swimming. Now, how real was that fear? It was not real. It was imaginary. There was no shark in the pool. There could not be a shark in the pool. It didn't make me any less fearful because my heart would palpitate. I felt nauseous. I refused to get in the pool. I was like, I don't care what you say. You guys go night swimming. I'm going to sit right here. I still had the physical effects of that fear that overwhelmed me to a point where I was not going to move. I was not going to swim. I was not going to enjoy the pool with all my other family and cousins and friends, right? So it's the same thing as an adult. We have to have some analytical thinking and say, what is real and what is not real? Now, that does not mean that our unreal fear is not having an effect on our physical bodies. Mm-hmm. It does not mean that we're not sweating, that our heart is not racing, that we don't feel nauseous. We're going to have those, but how do we work through them so that we can get to a point where we understand, okay, I've worked through it. It doesn't mean that I'm not afraid of doing it again. It just means that I know I have accomplished it once and can do it again.
Within coaching, there are a lot of tools that we use that breaks down to what is real, like really breaking it down to what is real and what isn't real. And is there a real danger or not? Because we sometimes become overloaded in our danger signals. And when we have, it's like an alarm going off in the morning. When your alarm goes off in the morning, you don't leave it on all day. You eventually get up and go and you turn it off. You might snooze it 17 times, but eventually you get up and you go, right? But fear means that we've left an alarm on. And we only need to go back and realize, okay, what is this alarm about? And is this a real threat or is it not? Just like you said, risk assessment, right? And on a scale of 1 to 10, is this really going to happen or is this unlikely to happen? And I've been there. I've been there at the pool with 17 cousins and somebody screams shark and we're like killing each other trying to get out of the pool because we're sure we're about to get eaten, right? Completely irrational things that can really overwhelm us. So in coaching, it's really about getting down to what is real, what are some of the limiting beliefs, and then building people up to testing, to take baby steps, which is actually my seventh permission is permission to take, sorry, that's not true. It is permission number 3, permission to take baby steps. Because sometimes we have to take small bites, small little dares to build up our courage and our confidence. Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't all happen overnight. It's not like I'm cured. And look, sometimes people have something so deep that they need to go beyond coaching. They need a little counseling, which is perfectly okay. So you kind of really take care, because people have had trauma that have just left them with scars. There's a difference between a splinter and a scar, right? And there's healing at times that needs to be done in order for us to take those baby steps forward, right? And deal with what is real, and then start to create micro wins, because the micro wins create the evidence of what we're able to do, and it builds our confidence, because confidence is how we sell ourselves best. You go for a job interview, Angel, people don't necessarily buy your qualifications. They buy your confidence that you can deliver on what that company needs. Same thing with a business. We've seen it a million times where if you're listening to this, you probably have had a time. You can raise your hand and then say, yeah, I could, where you pitched something and it was a good, solid pitch, but somebody else came and they promised the world with confidence, and they're probably not going to deliver half of that stuff, but they were so confident, so certain that they got the deal that you didn't get. Now, I'm not advocating in any way being shysty or shady. You have to come with the truth. Mm-hmm. But if you you bring something to the table and you're not confident, people can't feel that confidence in you, you may not be the one that they choose. And because you're not choosing yourself.
I like that, choosing yourself. Mm-hmm. And having the ability and permission to choose ourselves, especially when we get to a point where we know, I talk, let's just say my grandmother is, 90 years old this year. Mm-hmm. She literally just retired last year. She worked full time until she was 89.
Woo.
Yeah.
Wow.
She worked 2 jobs until she was almost, I want to say 70, full-time jobs. But when I talk to her, she always comes back to not having the ability to go to school. And she was pulled out because she was born in the Depression, right? So she was pulled out of school by, I want to say 3rd or 4th grade. And then she just worked ever since then. And, of course, there were life decisions and things that happened, and she continued to work multiple jobs because she was a single woman, a single mother of 2. And the jobs that she worked were, she did everything from truck driving to laying cement to you name it, right? And so I love to hear her stories, because part of that, when I think, oh, I can't do that. And I think back to my grandmother, who, by the way, is 4'7", is when I think about, some of the stuff that she's done, and I'm just I feel, I feel this strength, and I pull this strength from her. And then, she always would return back to, I wish that I would have been able to go to school. I wish that I would have gotten an education. And honestly, that was a big factor in me giving myself permission to go to school after having 2 children and thinking, okay, I can still do this. And then, when I doubt myself, I call her and I'm like, oh, I don't know. And she's like, what do you mean you don't know? Come on, let's do it, And so she's part of my personal board of directors. When I'm feeling low, my grandmother is like, come on, let's do this. Let's do this. Speaking of personal board of directors, and we talk about having the support system, how do you feel, or how do you talk to people when they surround themselves with people who are all like themselves?
There's a great comfort zone in that, right? And there's a little bit of a difference in that. If you're surrounding yourself with people who are just like you, but they're go-getters, they're striving for the next level, then, that's okay. But if you're someone that's struggling with self-worth, you're struggling with confidence, and you're surrounded by other people like that, then you are more likely to get stuck in that, because you're not even going to realize you're challenged, because it feels like the norm in your universe. Being able to tap into mastermind groups, organizations, networking, going back to school, doing professional development, taking a certification, where you are exposed to people who may be, 2, 3, 10 steps ahead of you, can be incredibly, incredibly rewarding. The thing to watch out for is that you don't come to that and then allow that to make you feel less than. Right? That you don't get yourself intimidated. Allow yourself to be inspired. Allow yourself to learn, because comparison is the thief of all joy, right? Like, I never want to be the biggest fish in the pond. Like, as soon as I'm the biggest fish in the pond, I need a bigger pond, because I will not grow. I will never learn more. And that's how my journey. We probably have talked a little bit about how I also coach with the Lisa Nichols organization and got involved with that as an international coach, because I needed a bigger pond. I wanted to be challenged. So I surrounded myself with these international, just incredible speakers and coaches that have pushed me. And my growth has been exponential because I saw what was possible. I didn't look at that and go, oh, I could never do that. I looked at it and go, okay, roadmap. Here's what I'm going to do next. I broke it down into baby steps, and I'm working my way there. And it doesn't mean I need to get all the way there. I just need to get as far as my own journey chooses itself to be, as I design it. But I'm learning from those who've come ahead.
Yes. With comparison, we talk about comparison all the time based on what society tells us. And it's easy to get caught up in not being enough, or having, let's say, jealousies, because we're like, oh, well, we're not as pretty as that person. We don't have that car that person has. We aren't living that 100% beautiful life that person has. And so we begin to compare ourselves. And we break down our own confidences that way, because we're like, we're not enough. So our value, our worth becomes diminished, very much so. And 2, we grow jealousies. And with jealousies comes very negative feelings of anger, or of, things that we don't want to feel, because when we start to create those, they grow really quick. And with Beauty and Beast in Business, I always try to promote sisterhood, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, that person has much more than I do. They're smarter than I am. They're more successful than I am. What can I learn from them so that I can move myself in an upward trajectory towards where they are? So it's really about, it's okay to set yourself in a comparison as if this is where I am, this is where they are, that's where I want to be. So what steps do I need to take to get there? And recognizing that they are our sister, and vice versa, right? Because now maybe we're here, and there are people, especially young people, who are coming up, and they're looking at us. They're down here, they're looking at us, and they're like, they have everything. Well, we want to be able to reach back and say, okay, what information do you need from me? Like, for me, information, it's not like I can give you what I know and all of a sudden I don't have it anymore. I can give you what I know and it grows. So it's not a bank account that empties out. It's more of a fire that kind of ignites. It continues to ignite. And it's recognizing that we as women have that ability to do that, to spread this fire of beauty and positivity and intellect.
Right. It's the story of the candle, right? Like, if I light your candle, it doesn't mean my candle goes out, right? It just means we have twice as much light, right? I also want to point out in that analogy, because everything you said is so powerful and so true. And honestly, one of the most painful things that I ever witness is when women are not nice to women. Like, that's I just struggle with seeing that, and it's real and it happens. And I want to invite all of you to really be careful about the judgments and the conversations that you're having where you're tearing other people down, right? Mm-hmm. But in that mentorship relationship, I think it also behooves us to know that some of these young people that are coming up with a different set of skills. And they also have a lot to offer. And part of the reason sometimes that they get defensive is because, look, we're at one end of the spectrum where we're like, we don't want to be insignificant because we're older, and they don't want to be insignificant because they're young.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's always ways of categorizing people to make them less. And I invite all of us to really explore how we see what we can learn and enjoy and celebrate in all the different stages, so that it becomes a very kind of mutual growing relationship where whatever advantages we have, we can open doors, we can share experiences, and they can teach us things about Instagram we haven't even dreamt of yet.
It's about not being solo, but about creating a community, right?
Yes.
Creating a solid community. Well, Liz, we are coming to the end of our hour. It goes so quick, but what I want to ask you is, can you help our viewers by providing a golden nugget of information, actionable tools that they might be able to take with them and say, I might be able to use this in order to get where I want to go?
So here's one that comes up a lot, because business owners and corporate people run into this all the time. Like, changes happen. And when changes happen, sometimes we really have to present ourselves in a new light. But we don't often know how to speak of ourselves because we've never kept track of ourselves. And here's what I mean as a specific example. Keep track of your successes every month. Every month, document that project that you completed, that big sale that you had. You need evidence. When you go forth, people are going to ask you, like if you're going for a new job, they're going to want evidence of what you created. If you're going to go and pitch to a whole new clientele, they're going to want to know, well, what have you done in the past? And you can't sit there trying to guess. You have to know. Mm-hmm. So I always advise my clients, my corporate clients, as well as my business clients, to own their careers. If you're in the corporate world, the employer owns the job, but you own your career. So keep track, document it, written down. It could be digital, it could be on paper. I don't really care, like whatever, however you can house this, but it needs to be on your own system, because you don't want to walk into work Monday and they've taken your laptop away and everything is gone, right? Document yourself every single month. It'll build your confidence. It'll build your evidence stories. It'll allow you to be mindful of what you're creating and where you want to grow. Right? It'll completely transform how you see, how you feel, and how you communicate yourself.
And that's a powerful way to end Beauty and Beast in Business. Yes. Thank you so much, Liz, for your time.